Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And this is it. We finally made it after one entire year. This is the end. We're finishing the Torah portions for the year. And of course, next week we will roll them back again. So thank you, everybody, in advance. For those of you who've been here with me since the beginning and probably way beyond that. I mean, some of you have been around for several years. And of course, all praise to YAH. And look who I have with me tonight, Pamela. Pamela and I are in the center, kind of the middle right now of Sukkot. We are finishing the fall feast. Some of you, depending on what calendar you're on, you haven't even begun yet. I think, well, actually, no, I think maybe some of you are on Yom Teruah today or this weekend, not really sure, but everyone's on different calendars. So whatever day you guys are on, Shabbat Shalom, and glad you guys can be here right now. So that being said, Pamela, you've been on. I feel like this is a big accomplishment for the both of us. Really, you way more, because I can say we here because I want everybody to know that this last year, as I have read through the Torah portions, through the Paleo, if you're not aware, Pamela was translating this at a supernatural, superhuman, superhero pace. And it was it was a shocker for me. I think halfway through this, I finally figured it out. We were probably in Leviticus, and I realized that you were actually writing it all by hand on paper, and then of course you would translate it over 21st century style afterwards. And but anyways, you got it done. Here we are. This is a big accomplishment for both of us tonight, and so you're experiencing Sukkot in a very literal way. And before we get going tonight, I think everybody would love to hear your story and where you're at. And take it away.
Well, if everyone notices, of course it's just brown paneling behind me, but it is a new setting for me. Really and truly, I'm tabernacling in a different place now. Some of you may or may not know that my grandsons and I had been living in not the best circumstances. The place that we were living in, it was not good. And I had been praying about it. And Rebecca, our own Rebecca Gould, she'd been praying with me. She was like, "Pam, you need to get out of there. Pam, you need to get out of there." And so we had been praying about it. And there's that thing, where to go. That was one of the big things. Where should I go? Y'all, where should I go? And then how to go, because when you move, if anyone who has moved before, you know how it costs. Well, on Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, actually the Day of Covering is what it actually means. On the Day of Covering, I was doing my fast, and I was trying to observe the feast, and I got a call. And I got a call from a housing place, a housing authority, and said that I had been approved, that I got an apartment. And so I'm like, praise God that I had gotten this apartment. And so I was just ecstatic. And it wasn't very long after that I got a text from Noel. He said, "We had a very generous donation to come in, and we're going to be able to give you." Do you mind me saying how much?
Please do. Yeah, that's fine.
He said we were given a sizable donation. We're going to be able to give you $2,500. And I was like a Victorian maiden. I literally, it was just like that kind of a moment. And to see, I mean, y'all he was working just like that. It was like I got the call from the place that I had an apartment. Noel gives me a call saying, a text saying, "We're going to give you this." And so I 3 days later, I was gone. I was out of that place I had been and into the new place. And with it, I was able to, rent a moving van. I was able to get electric service put over. I was able to pay, the deposits and the rent for the new place, and household essentials, food, that kind of thing. So if you can understand, the movement of YAH, it wasn't me. It wasn't about me. It's about the generosity of the Tuck community. It was about how quickly YAH moved, and what was amazing. I was on a waiting list. I was not supposed to be next. I was not supposed to be next. Another lady was actually in the office signing the papers, signing the lease papers, and she gets up and walks out and leaves. And so I get the next apartment, and the apartment that I got is right beside my oldest daughter. We're just like right next door to one another. And so it was like miracle after miracle after miracle. And so I just wanted to share with you, that it was because of your kindness that I was able to get out of the situation that we were in and get into a better situation. And it's been rough. It's been rough, that when I determined when I realized I couldn't work full time and translate. I couldn't do the two. I had to make a choice. Was I going to keep teaching at a job I didn't believe in, or was I going to leave? And I lost almost everything. I lost almost everything. Was I going to do that? Was I going to do what the Ruach was moving me to do? And Noel said, this has been the Ruach. This is not me. If it hadn't been me, it would have been somebody else, because this is the work of the Ruach. And I know it because it was just like unbelievable. And so I wanted to share with you these miracles, this miracle that has happened to me. The gift he gave me in terms of he let me, be the hand, that was writing the stuff down. And the miracle of how he moved me out of a terrible situation into where I'm at now. And I'm sorry I haven't got it set up as nicely as I want it to, but that will come hopefully. And I think we already have better reception is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And Pamela was she was, I guess, being a little kind there about her former situation, what she is in now. So I won't give any details that she didn't give, but I'm so glad she's out of the former situation. And when she mentioned the $2,500, it is my goal. And I want to be real transparent with everybody, because we support Rebecca and we're trying to support Pamela. My goal is to give her, to live off of, to translate the Bible, $2,500 a month, which, as many of you know, is like nothing, right? In this day and age. I mean, that's what, if I can get her on, say $30,000 a year, right, over 12 months, this is the first month that we were able to do that. There's been months where I gave her, I think, 2,200. There was months where I gave her 1,200. Last month I gave her 200. This was the first month, so praise Yah that we were able to get her up to there. And of course, I'm hoping, when you guys buy her books, of course, that will go above and beyond that as well, and she gets profit for that. I have not put it on the community because the first of every paycheck goes to pay for Rebecca every single month, and she gets it before my own family does. But I haven't put it on the community to say, this is what we have to do every month. But I have put it out there, guys, like, let's give above and beyond and let's support Rebecca. And if you got, I'm sorry, Pamela, if you see, I'm mixing you. It's like my own children, you go through, like, by the time I get to even sometimes my own daughter with Rivka, I'll go like Riv, I go through like all the different syllables and stuff. So the vowels and consonants, but anyways, yeah, that's my desire, guys. I want to build it. If she has been a blessing to you with the Paleo Hebrew translations, and she's going to continue doing this, y'all willing, please, guys, just support this ministry. And enough said on that. And let's go ahead and get right into this tonight. So here we are, week 52, and this is going to be the final week. I'm combining two Torah portions together. Really, they shouldn't be split up because this is all the Song of Moses right here. And you guys are in for a treat, of course, because I keep on saying Rebecca tonight. Pamela, Miss Pamela here is going to translate it, read it for you guys. So please take it away.
All right. This is from Deborah, and this is from his 12th speech. This is the 12th speech of Meshachah. And Meshachah said a word in order in the ears of all the gathered assembly of Yasharel as the words of this song until they were finished. So this is a song he was commissioned to write. Prick up your ears, Hashemayim, and I will speak instruction. And hear, understand, obey, Haaretz, unto the declaration of my mouth. For my speech shall drop down like rain. My speech shall flow like the dew, like showers upon the tender grass, like a downpour upon the green herb. For I will call out the name of Yahweh. Come, ascribe magnificence unto our Elohim, the rock. His work is perfect, whole, sound, complete. For all his ways are just. He is in all of faithfulness and without iniquity. He is honest, upright, and correct. They have acted corruptly against him. Their stain is not of his sons. Theirs is a perverse and deceitful generation. A revelation of Yahweh. You have repaid him thusly, O people foolish and not wise. Is he not your father? Has he not acquired you, fashioned you, and set you upright? Remember the days of ancient time. Stand apart. Understand the years, generation circling after generation. Inquire of your father, and he will proclaim openly. And your bearded ones, they will declare unto you. Al-Yaun, taking the nations as possession. In his separating the sons of Adam, he set in place the boundaries of the people according to the tally of the sons of Yasharel. For the portion of Yahweh is his people. Yaakub is the measuring line of his inheritance. He found him in a land, a wilderness, in a formless waste, a howling desolation. He turned him around. He caused him to understand. He gave him intelligence. He kept watch over him like the middle of his eye. Like an eagle arouses his abode, trembling, brooding over his young. He expands his wings. He takes him. He lifts him upon his pinions. Yahweh alone guided him, and without any foreign awe with him. He caused him to be carried upon the high places of Arath, that he might eat the fruit of the fields. He caused him to suckle honey from a rock, and oil from the flinty stone, cheese of cattle, and milk of the flock, and rams, sons of Bashan, and he-goats with fatness of kidneys, of wheat, and of the blood of grapes. You will drink wine. Yasharaon has grown fat, and has trampled about, kicking. You have grown fat. You have grown thick with fat. You are covered. He has forsaken Elohim, who fashioned him. He has foolishly treated with contempt the rock of his Yeshua. He caused him to burn with jealousy. With abominations he provoked his displeasure. He sacrificed himself unto demons, not unto Allah of Elohim, but unto whom they knew not, newly come up, whom your fathers never feared. And he declared, I will hide myself from them. I will observe what shall be their latter end. They are a perverse generation, children who have no faithfulness in them. They have incited me to jealousy with that which is not all, have provoked me with anger with their transitory vanities. And I will incite them to jealousy with that which is not a people, With a foolish nation, I will provoke them to anger. For fire is kindled in my anger, and you will be set on fire as far as the lowest Sheol. You will consume Aratz and her produce, and you will scorch the foundations of the mountains. I will scrape together over them calamities. I will bring a full end of my arrows upon them. I have exhausted with hunger, and I have battled with plague and pestilence, bitter poisons, and the teeth of beasts. I will send forth against them with burning poison of the creepers of the dust. They will be bereaved by the sword from outside, and from the inner chambers, dread. Both the young warriors, in addition, the basulah, the suckling babe, and with the gray haired man. I have declared, I will scatter them as the wind. I will remove from among men the remembrance of them, unless I had turned aside the vexation of an enemy, lest his adversaries estranged himself, lest they should declare, his hand raises, and YAH, the ever living, has not fashioned all of this. For they are a nation wandering lost, devoid of purpose, and there is a lack of intelligence in them. If only he were wise, if only he prudently understood this, he would perceive their latter end. How can one pursue 1,000 and two put to flight 10,000 conditionally if their rock had not sold them? And YAH shut them up. For not like our rock is their rock, and our enemies are judges. For from the vine of Shaddam is their vine, and from the field of Amaraha their grapes are bunches of poisons. It yields to them a poisonous plant of grapes. The burning poison of dragons is their wine, and the head of virulent vipers. Is this not stored up with me, sealed up in my treasury? To me are vengeance and retribution unto the proper time. You shall cause to fall down their foot, for the day of calamity approaches, and you hastily make ready upon them. For YAH will judge his people, and over his servants he will lament. For he observes their hand has departed and has failed, shut up and forsaken. And he will ask, where is their Elohim, the rock in whom they took refuge? He consumed the fatness of his sacrifices. He drank their drink offerings. Can he rise up and help you? Will he exist over you for protection? Observe now that I am he, and there lacks any other Elohim with me. I slay, and I will make alive. I have smitten, and I will heal. And there lacks any who can deliver from my hand. For I lift up my hand toward Hashemayim, and I declare I exist. For as far as the eye can see or perceive to the edge of the horizon and beyond, conditionally, should I sharpen my sword of lightning, and should my hand seize hold upon judgment, I will turn back, taking vengeance upon my enemies, and giving recompense unto my haters. My arrows I have made drunk from blood, and my sword you will consume flesh, from the blood of the mortally wounded, and from the head of the captives, of the commander of the enemy. O nations, vibrate the voice. Shout for joy with him. He will take vengeance for the blood of his servants, and he will turn back the vengeance of his adversaries. He has made a covering atonement over his land, over his people. Mashahah finishes his admonition. And Mashahah came, and he said a word in order, as all the lyrics of the song in the ears of the people. He and Hawashah and Mashahah made an end of the speeches, as all the instructions toward Yasharel. And he declared toward them, fix your heart upon all the Debarayim, which I again testify against you this day, which you shall commandeth your sons to guard, to fashion, as all the instruction of this Torah. For this speech is not only by reason of you, for he who is your life, and upon this depart, you will prolong your days upon the red earth which you pass over us the Yarden there to possess her. And YAH, the ever-living, set a word in order toward Al-Mashahah in the bone of the day, to declare, ascend toward the mount of the Abarayam unto Mount Nabau, which is in the land of Moab, that is over against the face of Yarakau, and observe the land of Canuine, which I have given unto the sons of Yasharel for an inheritance, and die upon the mountain where you ascend there, and be gathered toward your people, just as Aharon your brother died upon Mount Har, and was gathered toward his people, because you acted unfaithfully against me in the midst of the sons of Yasharel, by the water of the Merayabah Kudash, in the wilderness of Zan, because you did not regard me as set apart in the midst of the sons of Yasharel. But from over against that place you will observe the land, but you will not go there toward that land which I have given unto the sons of Yasharel. The Barakah of Mashahah. This is the Barakah of Mashahah, wherewith Mashahah, the man of Ha Alahayam, did barak at the sons of Yasharel to the face of his death. And he declared, Yahweh, the ever-living, has come from Sayanuhya, and has sprung forth from Sha'ayar unto them, shining forth from Mount Fa'aron. And he arrived with a myriad of the set-apart ones, in his right hand a fiery commandment for them. Wholly loving the people, all his set apart are in your hand, and they lie down at your foot. Each he will lift up from your precepts. Mashahah has commanded unto us a Torah, the inheritance of the gathered assemblies of Yaakov. And he existed Malak in Yasharan, in the gathering together of the heads of the people, uniting the tribes of Yasharah. Ra'auban shall exist and shall not die, and all of his males shall exist, not a few. And this is for Yahudah. And he declared, Hear, O Yahweh, the voice of Yahudah, and you will bring him toward his people. His hands shall be sufficient for him, and you will exist a helper from his enemies. He declared of Lawiah, your Themaiah and your Uriah are for the pious man, whom you will prove at Masahah, and you did contend with over the water of Marayabah, who is declared of his father and of his mother, I have not observed him. And as his brothers he did not recognize, and his son he knew not, for he guarded your speech, and he kept watch over your Barayath. He has taught your judgments unto Yaakov, and he has placed incense into your nose, and whole ascending offerings upon your altars. Barak, O Yahweh, his integrity, and you will graciously accept the labor of his hands. Smite the loins of those rising up against him, and from his haters removing them that they rise not. Of Banu Yaman declare, he will be beloved of Yahweh. He will settle down to dwell in safety beside him, covering over him all the days, and between his shoulders he shall dwell. Of Yosef declare, from the barakah of Yahweh is his hand, from the precious things of Shemayim, from the dew and from the deep places that lie beneath, and from the precious things and fruit of Shamash, and from the precious things produced by Yerachayim, and from the head of the ancient mountain, and from the precious things of the perpetual hills, and from the precious things of Arat in her fullness, and the delight of him who dwells in the thorny bush. You'll bring these upon the head of Yosef, and upon the crown of the head of the Nazarite of his brothers. The ornament of his splendor is the firstling of his ox, and his horns are the horns of Riam, With them he will push the people. He will smite the extremities of Arats, and they are the myriad thousands of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. And of Zebulun he declared, Rejoice, Zebulun, in your going forth, and Yeshashakar in your tents. He has called out there the people of the mountain. He has sacrificed the sacrifices of righteousness. For the abundance of the sea he has suckled, and the hidden treasures concealed by the sand. And of God declare, Baruch, from the enlarging of God. Like a lion he lies down and tears in pieces the arm with the top of the head. He chooses the first for himself, for there is the portion, the carved out panels, and the heads of the people arrived. He has fashioned the righteousness of YAH, and his judgments with Yasharal. And of Dan he declared, Dan is a lion's whip. Don. And he shall leap forth violently from Habashan. And of Naphtaliah he declared, O Naphtaliah, satisfied, delighted, and made full with the barakah of Yahweh, you will take possession seaward and southward. And of Asher he declared, Baruch, with offspring Asher will exist. Graciously accept his brothers, and his foot shall be immersed in oil. Iron and brass are your shoes, and as your days, so shall be your rest. There is none like the all of Yasharun, who rides Shemayim in your aid, and in the firmament in his splendor. YAH is of ancient time a refuge, and from beneath are the everlasting arms. And he will cast out the enemy from before your face, and he will declare, Destroy. And Yasharel shall settle down to dwell, secure and separate. The eye of Jacob shall be toward a land of corn and new wine. Additionally, his Shemayim shall drop down the dew. Happy are you, O Yasharel. Who is like unto you? A people delivered by Yahweh, the shield of your help, and who is the sword of your splendor. Your enemies shall fail for you, and you shall trample down their high places. The death of Mashahah. And Mashahah ascended from the dry desert regions of Moab toward Mount Nubau to the head of Phesagah, which is over against the face of Yericho. And Yahweh, the ever-living, showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, and all Naphtaliah, and the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, and all the land of Yehudah, as far as the sea of the Akaraun and the Negab, and the circular valley of Jericho, the city of the palm trees, as far as Zair. And Yahweh, the ever-living, declared toward him, This is the land which I solemnly swore unto Abraham, unto Yitzhak, and unto Yaakov, to say, Unto your seed I will give her. You will observe her with your eyes, but you will not pass over there. Conclusion by an ancient transcriber. And he died there. Mashahah, servant of Yahweh, the ever-living, in the land of Moab, upon the mouth of Yahweh, and he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, from the front of Bayath Fa'ayur. But no man knows his burial site unto this day. And Mashahah was a son of 120 years in his death. His eye was not failing in strength, and his vigor had not been taken away. And the sons of Yasharel wept for Mashahah in the dry, arid regions of Moab for 30 days, and they completed the days of weeping and mourning for Mashahah. And Yehoshua, son of Nun, was full of Ruach HaChamaha, for Mashahah had supported his hands upon him. And the sons of Yasharel heard and were obedient toward him just as Yahweh the ever living had commanded at Mashah. And there has not risen up a prophet again in Yasharel like Mashah, who knew Yahweh faces to faces, for all the signs and the splendid deeds which Yahweh the ever living sent him forth to fashion in Ratzmatzarayim unto Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land, and of all the strong hand and of the great terror which Mashah fashioned in the eyes of all Yasharal. It thus ends Debrayam.
Thus ends the reading of the Torah portions. That was beautiful. I didn't ask before you came on. I don't even know if you have notes or not tonight. I appreciate you coming on and reading and finishing these Torah portions. I am going to put you on the spot here, so apologies. And you could think about this. You don't have to answer this right now, but I would be curious, being that, see, I just basically read your translation, and I presented this last year, and I came up with some, there were some things that the Spirit really spoke to me on. But can you think back on some realizations you had through this process? That's something that, maybe it could be anything. It could be something that really changed your thinking about things. Something that really stuck out to you, something that changed the way you look at the rest of the Bible or your relationship with Yah. Does anything stand out to you?
Well, there's been so much you don't realize when you get into it to this extent, how much it does change. Language changes you, because we are, we perceive our world through language, and seeing how they viewed the world, and how the world was presented by them to us, these many thousands of years later. That has been a major impact on the way I see things and think things, and how much I realize that I'm walking in two realities, the physical and the spiritual realm at the same time. Another thing that has really stood out to me, especially, some of the things that you brought out, just because I translated it doesn't mean that the Ruach isn't going, that there won't be some things that other people see that I didn't see. It's kind of like, you can't see the forest for the trees. And there have been a lot of times that you have brought out things that, I didn't notice. And there have been other things, like when we've had discussions in the Discord group, the pre-Torah portions, fellowship, that people have brought out stuff, and I'm like, wait, I never saw it, but yeah, that what you're saying is right. That's true. And so it's like we're all necessary for the to put the pieces together. Does that? It may be that I didn't, Lisa. That may be that that might be missing in mine. Was it missing in yours, Noel? I don't know. Simeon should have been mentioned. I'll have to go back and look, because I'm working off my. This might not be the last copy that we did.
She said she's reading from the LXX Septuagint, so she was just curious.
Oh, I'll have to look. I'll have to look that up, Lisa. Thank you for bringing that out.
I'll give, before I go into this tonight, as you were reading through this tonight, just once again to tell everybody that I'm just listening to I was studying this week, and I'm listening to Pamela read it right now and just going, wow, that's a great line. That's a great line. That's a great line. And there's so much that I can't possibly cover tonight. And this is why when we roll it back next week, I'm just going to take my sweet time going through the Bible. I'm in no rush. Like, I'm just, whether it takes 3 years to get through the Torah or 10 or 20 years, I don't know. I'm just going to, take my time going through it. But I will say this, this last, I was this year when you basically present the Torah portions, and you're in a different position. You're trying to study it to present it. Now, I had gone through the Torah portions at least 5 cycles before this, and those were all very impactful. But this one really was probably, aside from the very first tour, because the first time you always remember that, and it's always so special. You crossed into the spiritual new kind of plateau or paradigm. But this one was otherwise the most impactful for me. And I think the biggest thing I took away from this was the total misdirection that is constantly thrown out there about how the Torah is done away with. There's just this, because of the temple being done away with. And it becomes more and more of an empty, shallow arguments with no legs, no bearing. It's all an illusion. And when you really digging into this and going, no, this is the face of YAH. This is his very character. This is who he is. And understanding that there are, you guys have heard me say this a lot, that there is the letter of the law and then there's the spirit of the law. And I have Christians coming at me all the time going, oh, the Torah, that's the letter. You keep the letter of the law, but the letter of the law has been done away with. I keep the spirit of the law. And I'm just like, are you seriously? Like, you serious? Because like the spirit is like, it's like, this is the circumcised heart. This is full, like, like, I don't know, just this is the Torah to the max, basically.
When you're playing a video game, this is the legendary. They don't realize that the spirit of the law is the legendary level. It's not just the regular mainstream level of playing the the video game. This is legendary.
Yeah. And so just to give everyone just a very practical, well, maybe some people might not see this as too practical, but just a obvious example is people are like, well, no, you can't bring a sacrifice to the temple anymore, so your whole system's done away with. And as I pointed out, that digging into like the fire itself, how YAH lit this fire, and the priest had to kindle this fire. They had to keep this fire going. And you know what happened to Aaron's 2 sons? They did a big naughty and they brought in a strange fire and they were just torched right there. And this is what YAH is saying. He's like, I don't want any other spirit coming into this, albeit the Python spirit or the Kundalini spirit or whatever spirits. It could be the Baal, Baal, or the Jezebel spirit, whatever spirit you want to dig up. I don't want any of those other spirits. There's only one spirit. It's what Christianity knows as the Holy Spirit, or the Ruach of YAH, or you could say Chokmah, wisdom. And this is the spirit, and you are to kindle this. You do not light this on your own. You are the priest. You kindle this. And rather than going to the actual altar in Jerusalem and putting a goat on there, you are to actually put yourself as an offering onto that fire. And this is what Messiah says, you are to pick up your cross and follow him. We are to die every day and be a living sacrifice. And that is Torah on a spiritual level. And that has really impacted me this last year. So with that, let's just, and please, Pamela, jump in any time. Let's just start digging through this, or else I'll never get through this tonight. Let's talk about, because this really impacted me this week, the eloquent speech of Moses, of Mashaha. And this is a beautiful, beautiful way to end the Torah. Could it end any more beautiful, Pamela? I mean, he's like singing the song, like he's dying, he's going off to die, and he sings this song for the ages. And hopefully, if we have time tonight, I want to end it on Psalm 90, which is a psalm of Moses. And you're going to, now that we've been through Deuteronomy, that you're going to read that and go, wow, I see these themes that are consistent, that were on Moses's mind. Well, so it says right here, Deuteronomy 32, it says, and Mashaha set a word in order in the ears of all the gathered assembly of Yasharel, the words of his song until they were finished. So he is now going from mumble lips and being like, well, let's look here. I'm going to come right back to this, but he says this in Exodus chapter 4. Then Moshe said to YAH, please, Adonai, please, YAH, I have never been eloquent, neither recently nor in times past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. For I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. And Yahweh said to him, who has made man's mouth? Or who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now then go, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say. Now, I never really got that. You know how you just read something hundreds and hundreds of times, and this is repeated constantly in ministries where someone says, "I'll be your Aaron," right? I'll be the words of your mouth. And I've had people say that to me in the past. When I ran ministries, I had one guy who was in a great partnership with him. He's like, "I'll be your Aaron," right? And he was. But this isn't what Yah wants for him. He doesn't want him to have an Aaron. He says, I'm going to put the words in your mouth. But then Moses protests, and he says, the anger of Yahweh burned against Moshe, and he said, is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? Oh, he says this first. But he said, I was like wondering where this went. But he said, please, Yahweh, now send the message by whomever you will. So he's like, just give it to I don't want this job. Give it to someone else. And then the anger of Yahweh burned against Moshe. And he said, is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently. And moreover, behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in heart. You are to speak to him and put the words in his mouth. And I, even I, will be with your mouth and his mouth, and I will teach you what you are to do. So you see this constantly throughout, where Yah's like, okay, I want you to do something, and they're like, and he's like, okay, fine. I almost feel like Aaron is like plan B here. It's not that he didn't want Aaron as a high priest, but he wanted Moshe to be able to go and speak. And he understood full well that he was mumble lips, right? He had some sort of problem with his speech. God didn't care. He's like, I'm going to put the words in your mouth. And so we see how hesitant he is, but then look at how the Torah ends. His brother Aaron is dead. His brother can no longer speak for him. And so he goes from someone who is totally apprehensive, who doesn't want to go to Egypt, who doesn't want to confront Pharaoh, he doesn't want to confront Israel, to, singing the song in front of them at the end. And that never really hit me until recently. So let's go over here and look at this story in Jasher, the beginnings of Moshe's speech impediment and the angel of Yah. Now it says this, and in the 3rd year from the birth of Moses, Pharaoh was sitting at a banquet when the queen's name is Alparanith, the queen, was sitting at his right and Bethia at his left. And the lad Moses was lying upon her bosom, and Balaam, the son of Beor, with his 2 sons, and all the princes of the kingdom were sitting at a table in the king's presence. And remember, now in the past I've talked about how Balaam is kind of like Moshe's duality. And the lad stretched forth his hand upon the king's head and took the crown from the king's head and placed it on his own head. Because when the king and the princes saw the work which the boy had done, the king and princes were terrified, and one to his neighbor expressed astonishment. Now, keep in mind, they knew he was a Hebrew. They had just slaughtered off, they were trying to slaughter off a lot of Hebrews, and that's a whole different story right there. Of course, he's saved in the basket. And they're like, okay, clearly this little boy, he's a Hebrew. This is exactly why we wanted to kill all the Hebrews, because look at what they're going to do. He's going to come usurp your throne. He wants your crown for himself. So let's just skip ahead here. And we see that Balaam actually comes, well, let's see. And Balaam said to the king, starting verse 20 here, let us moreover call for all the judges of Egypt and the wise men thereof, and let us know if the judgment of death is due to this boy, as thou didst say, and then we will slay him. So, of course, Balaam wants to kill Moses from the very beginning, being his kind of the dark to his light duality. And Pharaoh sent and called for all the wise men of Egypt, and they came before the king. And this is what I really want. As a side note, I kind of got carried down this trail, but we are in an election year, and I want everyone to pay attention to this. I'm not going to get too political with you tonight, hopefully, but and an angel of Yahweh came among them, and he was like one of the wise men of Egypt. So they just think, they don't know this is an angel from Yah, that he came down from heaven. And I understand the idea of a messenger. I think that in this context, it is specifically talking about an actual divine being from heaven. So this is what they do. They basically, the angel, let's see. The angel actually has the idea. He's like, all right, This is what he says in verse 24. And the angel, who seemed like one of the wise men of Pharaoh, answered and said as follows before all the wise men of Egypt and before the kings and princes. If it please the king, let the king send 4 men who shall bring before him an onyx stone and a coal of fire and place them before the child. And if the child shall stretch forth his hand and take the onyx stone, then shall we know that with wisdom has the youth done all that he has done, and we must slay him. But if he stretch forth his hand upon the coal, then shall we know that it was not with knowledge that he did this thing, and he shall live. And the thing seemed good in the eyes of the king and the princes. So the king did according to the word of the angel of YAH. And the king ordered the onyx stone and the coal to be brought and placed before Moses. And they placed the boy before them, and the lad endeavored to stretch forth his hand to the onyx stone. But the angel of YAH took his hand and placed it upon the coal, and the coal became extinguished in his hand. And he lifted it up and put it into his mouth and burned part of his lips and part of his tongue, and he became heavy in mouth and tongue. And when the king and princes saw this, they knew that Moses had not acted with wisdom in taking off the crown from the king's head. So this is the origin story of why he has this handicap. And so you see right here, so go ahead, Pamela.
I was just going to say regarding that, in the song of Mashahah, he says, this is, Yah speaking. He says, I have smitten and I will heal. Maybe he meant to heal Mashahah's tongue if Mashahah had not said, send it by somebody else. I don't want this message. He might have healed his the burn or whatever was wrong with his tongue. He said, I smite and I will heal. So he could have done it.
Right. Yeah, and this is exactly what I want to cover right now, because we could kind of take this in different directions. But one of the things I was looking at here in Exodus 4 is that, and you can see my note here, that Moses did not believe that in his heart, or maybe just his willpower, I don't know, but he did not believe that Yah could make his speech impediment beautiful. Well, we see right here, Yahushua HaMashiach, that he heals a mute man. This comes from Mark chapter 7. And he left the region of Tyre and came through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee within the region of Decapolis. And they brought to him one who was deaf and had difficulty speaking, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. And Yahushua took him aside from the crowd by himself and put his hands in his ears. And after spitting, he touched his tongue with the saliva. And looking up to the heaven with a deep sigh, he said to him, what is this? Hatha, that is, be opened. And the ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was removed, and he began speaking plainly. And he gave them orders not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them. Now, wait, I got the wrong one. Oops. There was supposed to be one of a mute man. So this one here is, he had difficulty speaking. There he is. So one who was deaf and had difficulty speaking. Okay. And he gave them orders not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them, the more widely they continued to proclaim it, so on and so forth. Go ahead, Pamela. You wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to, when it came to the incident with Balaam and the donkey or ass, and he opened up the animal's mouth. The word behemoth or behemoth comes from the word baham, which means shut ones or mute ones. And so the animals around us, the beasts around us, their mouths were shut. And there's some people say that they were shut on the day that humanity sinned, that the speech of the animals were shut. They could no longer speak with us. And so he opened the mouth of I can't remember if it was a donkey or an ass, but he opened the animal's mouth. And so, as you can clearly see, the mute man is no longer mute. And so Mashahah could have been healed.
Yeah. And so here's where I want to go with this, is that all of us have handicaps in life. It could be a mental handicap too, something that is holding us back. I've had because here at the Unexpected Cosmology, one of my visions was to hand the microphone to a lot of different people. And I've had a very difficult time doing that. I have all these people coming up to me with these brilliant ideas and things like that, and they're like, I can't go in front of people and talk to them about it. I'm, they won't say they're afraid, but they're too afraid to do it. I think people are on a national level more afraid of speaking publicly than dying. So let's see what this says right here. If a man, this comes from the Book of Wisdom. All right. If a man has any talent and fails to develop it, he is unworthy of the gift and in due course must make an accounting. The man who does not continually expand the horizon of his life becomes stagnant within himself. The man who does not study and learn places himself on the level of he places himself on the level of the dumb beast, though even dumb beasts learn. And that comes from the Book of Wisdom, chapter 12. So, how do you get a guy, a shepherd guy in the wilderness, doesn't want to make any public speeches, is a recluse, doesn't want to talk to anybody, to the point that he is leading all these people and singing in front of them this beautiful poetry that he has written himself? How do you get to that point? I've given this example a few times, but back in the day, Sarah, my wife, we used to watch the Olympics a lot. Now, I've never been a sports guy. I'm not into team sports. I'm not coming down on anybody who is, all right? If someone just really likes sports. One of the attractions I think I had to the Olympics is because you see these people, they're not really competing against anybody but themselves. And that's a big attraction for me because I am very, very competitive against nobody but myself. I just compete against myself constantly. So you see these guys skiing down a mountain, they're skiing for their life. They're racing against the clock, against the seconds, but they're trying to do their very best they've ever done. And so you're watching in this moment as people have been training their entire lives, and this is their moment. They've got 3 minutes, on the clock to sum up their entire life, right? And it occurred to us about maybe, 8-10 years ago, the last time we actually watched the Olympics. We were watching, I can't even remember if she was a gymnast or swimmer at this point. I don't even remember the performance. I just remember her speech afterwards, and she won all these gold medals. And she's being interviewed, and the interview is actually a little surprised. And she's like, because she was just assuming that she was the best at what she did. And the competitor, she stopped the interviewer and said, no, I was actually never the best at what I did. I was never the best. She's like, what are you talking about? She's like, the only reason I'm standing up on that podium is not because I was the best. It's because there were always better people in the class than me, but none of them stuck around. They all gave up. And I just was in it the longest, and I just kept going at it and going at it and going at it. And here I am. And just that's, something to think about for everyone out there. If you feel that YAH is calling you to something and you feel inadequate, he will heal those inadequacies. You can just go back to my older videos and I turn on the live and I'm like a deer in front of headlights, and it was just awful. And he's working on all of us. All right, so here's something that Yahushua says about the parable of the talents. You guys know this here, but I'll read this really quickly. For the kingdom of heaven will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. And then he went away. And of course, the spirit of jealousy comes in for the person with the 1 talent, and he's looking at the person with the 5, and he's like, why don't I get the 5, right? And this is where I'm really big on keeping in our own lane and competing against ourselves, right? We're not competing against anybody else. We're taking whatever talents we've been given and saying, how can I, multiply this? He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. And his master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. And his master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Those are the words I want to hear. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Those are the words I am spending my whole life hoping to hear. He who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew chapter 25. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about this angel. This is kind of going off a little bit from the discussion tonight. This really stuck to me. So here you have in the court of Pharaoh, you have an actual, I put on the title tonight, angel agents or agent angels, or whatever. You actually have an agent of YAH. You can call him an angel in heaven or just a man, whatever you decide on. He is an agent from the Most High. He's coming into the court of Pharaoh, and nobody knows who he is. He's completely hidden. They think he's one of them, and he's actually working for the cause of the Most High. And my mind has my entire worldview has completely been reshaped recently in just understanding the way the world works. So, without going into all that history, you guys know that, like, he's listening right now. You guys know, like, I'm friends with John Q, and he has the word Q in his name for QAnon, and I am not an Anon. I am not with QAnon. I'm not associated with them. But if you talked to me several years ago, I'd be like, oh, it's all a deception. It's all a psyop, all this kind of stuff. Everything is a script. Everything is the stage. Don't believe any of it. And it's taken me a long time to come back around and go, no, actually, even though there are wicked governments out there, you actually have good people in the government at all different levels. If we are saying that Satan has his agents, well, YAH has his agents too. And they're all through there. And the tension that we have to live in on this earth is the wheat living with the tares. And that's just the tension. And we're not going to always know who the wheat and the tares are. So this is what it says in the book of the Luminaries 1248. This impacted me so much when I read this a couple of years ago. This is one of the passages that started turning my thinking into going, wow, maybe there are wicked people out there who really do have our demise plans, but maybe there's good people there as well who are actually infiltrating. All right. So this is what it says. This is Messiah speaking here. If an evil king be guarded by 1,000 good men, should these be slain to kill the king? Is it not best to first take the good men away from service with the king, bringing them into your own ranks? Those who serve evil, though powerful and wily, are cowards and hide behind the arms of better men. Therefore, by killing the brave men, are you not adding evil to evil? No, first bring the good and brave men to your side, and then let events happen as they will. That's a really interesting passage there. Now, let's look at the opposite here. Let's compare that with 1 Samuel chapter 22. And this is Saul, and he wants to kill anybody who aided David. Then Ahimelech answered the king, this would be King Saul, and said, and who among all your servants is as faithful as David, the king's own son-in-law, who is commander over your bodyguard and is honored in your house? Did I just begin to inquire of Elohim for him today? Far be it from me. Do not let the king impute anything against his servant or against any of the household of my father, because your servant knows nothing at all of this whole affair. But the king said, you shall certainly die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's household. And the king said to the guards who were attending him, turn around and put the priests of YAH to death, because their hand also was with David, and because they knew that he was fleeing and did not inform me. But the servants of the king were unwilling to reach out with their hands to attack the priest of YAH. All right. Here's a passage from 2 Peter 2. And so, okay, let's just read this up. So, for if Elohim did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, or you could say, I don't know if that would be Sheol or Tartarus, not really sure, but whatever. I'm going off with the NASB here. Cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness, held for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but protected Noah, preacher of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. And if he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, which we actually saw tonight, it was in Deuteronomy, to destruction by reducing them to ashes, having made them an example of what is coming for the ungodly, if he rescued righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the perverted conduct of unscrupulous people, for by what he saw and heard, that righteous man, while living among them, felt his righteous soul tormented day after day by their lawless deeds, then Yahweh knows how to rescue the godly from a trial. So you see here that this actually lines up with what we read in the book of the Illuminators, that before you destroy the wicked, you actually have to remove the righteous from the equation. And, I'm kind of just curious if we are seeing something unfold on the world stage that was intended as a script, that was intended in a direction to eliminate us really by 2030 and all these terrible things we saw. And I've come to the conclusion that actually Yah has not abandoned us. He hasn't. He has not abandoned us. We are not left here alone to the devices of the enemy, that he has the full ability to turn their plot against them and flip it on their heads. And let us not forget, one of the things that we do not put into the human dynamic, actually the satanic, in that we call the government satanic, and I have the FBI breaking down my door in a second, but we call the elites so satanic, and they are, but then we leave out the satanic element. What is it? It's pride, guys. What brought about Satan's fall? Pride. And what does pride do? It blinds them. Pride has the ability to darken someone's vision, so that you could be standing in the presence pretty much of Yah, and he could be surrounded by light, and he's darkness to you. Like you're just like, how in the world did I ever believe this guy? How did I ever believe him? How did I ever believe his Bible? We have seen this in real time. At least I have. I know Pamela has. I know many of you have. And it's a terrible thing. What if we are in a scenario we are seeing the elites so proud and haughty, and they really think they're going to win, and we might see a situation where they begin to topple in front of us? They basically fall into the very pit of their own design. Something to think about. All right. Getting back really quickly to Moses and the words of his mouth. I won't read Deuteronomy 18 here. Well, it actually says this here. I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them everything that I command him. And we see this beautiful passage here in Psalm 19. Some of you might remember this from a song in the 90s. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, Yahweh, my rock and my redeemer. And of course, this should be our prayer, right? That the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart are acceptable. Who transforms us? Who circumcises our heart? It's Yahweh. And when he circumcises our heart, what flows from it. And that's what we want. He can transform us, just as he did with Moshe. All right. Something I want to. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Pamela, before I move on?
No, that I was enjoying all of it. All that you were saying.
All right. Well, we see I talked about last week how it's interesting that Moshe lived 120 years and Job got a double portion. He lived 240. Really interesting. So I want to go over this again. Now, you can divide up, you can go 40 times 3, right? 40, 40, 40. And a lot of people will move that into Moshe's life. Actually, when you read the book of Jasher, it doesn't exactly work like 40, 40, 40. I think he was like around 18 when he killed the guy and he fled. And then he was the king in Ethiopia for like 40 years, which would make him like 58 or something like that. And then, he was imprisoned by Jethro for 10 years, whatever, but it all adds up, to the final 40 years with Israel. But something I was thinking about was the 4 seasons. Now you can go, there are obviously you can go 3. I was like, why did I do 3 times 4? Okay, you got 3 months per, between the spring equinoxes and the summer and winter solstices. And so this is something that I wrote in my paper, The Mystery of the Maple. I'm just going to read this to you guys real quick. The year is cyclical rather than linear and represents the life of man as you go through the 4 seasons, the health of the soul, as well as the coil of cosmology itself with its many resets. And need I mention the Ouroboros. So with the spring equinox, that's when the year begins. We are granted new life from the cold, dark death of winter. The seed of the kingdom are planted in the souls of our infancy, encouraging us to grow. Summer is a season which basks in the greenery of spiritual insight as well as youth. Autumn encourages the gnosis of wisdom, by which the bridge between our Father in the heavenly and our own material plane can be understood in light of our fading youth. Whereas with winter, we come closer to letting go of the material body, entering the realm of the invisible Ruach. And this is where we find Moses right now. He's in the winter of his life. This is what it says in the book of Wisdom, chapter 12. Do not fear the onset of old age. For though to the undeveloped spirit, it may be the bleak of winter of life. To the developed spirit, it is the harvesting time. Old age is bodily preparation for departure to rebirth. It is the approach to the threshold of a new life. And notice there that they specifically tied in old age with winter on the cycle. And then getting back into Hildegard, you guys know I love to quote from her. This is what she says. The soul reveals her capabilities according to the capabilities of the body, so that in childhood she brings forth simplicity, in youth strength, and in the fullness of age, when all the veins of the human being are full, she brings forth her greatness, strength, and wisdom. In the same way, a tree in its first growth brings forth tender shoots, and this would be the spring, goes on then to bear fruits, and that would be summer, and finally ripens that fruit to the fullness of utility to the harvest. But afterwards, in old age, this is when the tree has lost all its leaves, when a human being's bones and veins incline to weakness, then the soul reveals gentler strengths, as though tired of human knowledge. In the same way, at the onset of wintertime, the sap of the tree withdraws from the leaves and branches as the tree begins to incline towards old age. And for Hildegard, she's really big on greening. She would say that my grandmother used to say this. My grandmother used to say that God's color is green, or green is God's color. And Hildegard is really big on greening. Greening was showing that the presence of the all-encompassing presence of the Ruach HaKodesh of wisdom, and that our bodies have a greening effect, and that when she's talking about the sap leaving the trees, now it is we are withering up and we are dying, all part of the process. So this is coming from the Legends of the Jews, and of course, if you guys aren't picking up tonight, the theme tonight is death, the death of Moses, right? The end of his life, the end of our Torah portions. And then we will start the cycle again anew with the spring. But see, this is why the Torah portions really need to start with the spring equinox. Legends of the Jews, Volume 1 says, but the goodness of God has ordained that in every Nisan, and that's, of course, the spring equinox, at the time of the spring equinox, the seraphim shall approach the world of spirits and intimidate them so that they fear to do harm to men. Now, I will warn you that sometimes when you read Legends of the Jews, you're like, what in the world are they talking about? That's usually my first. I've read the Legends of the Jews so many times, and that's still my first reaction. I'm like, oh, come on, what are you talking about here? But actually, when you just stop to ponder every little aspect of this, you're like, wow, they're really onto something here. Anyway, so at the spring equinox, the seraphim shall approach the world of spirits and intimidate them so that they fear to do harm to men. And why, right? Well, there's something here about the birth of spirits, all right? There's something going on there with infancy and, guardian angels and so on and so forth. Again, if God in his goodness had not given protection to the weak, because the trees, all the growth is weak in the spring, the tame animals would have been exterminated, I guess, long ago by the wild animals. in Tammuz. I know we're dealing with Babylonian month names here. In Tammuz, at the time of the summer solstice, so second phase of our life, when the strength of behemoth is at its height. He roars so loud that all the animals hear it, and for a whole year they are affrighted and timid, and their acts become less ferocious than their nature is. Of course, I have in the Mystery of the Maypole and others, I talked about how in the Green Man, talked about how the millennial kingdom was represented by summertime. It was the strength of man when he's in his full vigor. It is the kingdom at its peak when everything is in full green. So you see this here with Behemoth is at his full strength as well. Again, in Tishri, at the time of the autumn equinox, the great bird Ziz flaps his wings and utters his cry, so that the birds of prey, the eagles and the vultures, blench, and they fear to swoop down upon the others and annihilate them in their greed. And again, were it not for the goodness of God, now, of course, what's happening in the autumn, right? Everything is falling down. Everything is, giving way. And again, were it not for the goodness of God, the vast number of big fish had quickly put an end to the little ones. But at the time of the winter solstice, in the month of Tibet, the sea grows restless, for the Leviathan spouts up water, and the big fish become uneasy. They restrain their appetite, and the little ones escape their rapacity. Why is the Leviathan represented by winter? Well, death. I've gone through that before. You go into his mouth, you go into the abyss. And so, Leviathan is stirred up, you're dying, right? It's wintertime. You're going into Sheol. So some interesting stuff there. All right, let's talk about the many names of Moses. I was going to do something kind of a little bit biographical today on Moses. So you're getting a little bit of that. I'm not going to go too far into this. But I find this really fascinating because maybe Pamela, you can show where maybe you can either agree or show where the common knowledge on this is wrong. Is Moshe or Mashaha, is it a Hebrew name or not? Because what I'm looking at, a lot of people are saying that we can look at the Bible and all these different names and go, okay, this is a Hebrew name, this is a Hebrew name, and this is a Hebrew name. But what I was digging up is that people are saying, well, we really don't know what Moshe means. We have theories on what it means, but it's not a typical Hebrew name, to the point that I don't think there were many Hebrews at all afterwards that were called Moses or Mashaha. Would you agree, disagree?
Well, his name comes from the word mash, which means to pluck out. And so so you could actually see in his name, the mem is the water. So it's actually showing how she actually plucked him out of the water. He was drawn out of the water. He was plucked out. So I think it's a Hebrew name.
Okay.
But, a lot of people don't understand that the Semitic languages, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of languages came out of Paleo-Hebrew. And that includes the Phoenician language, the Greek language, the Assyrian language. All these languages came out of the Paleo-Hebrew. Of course, I think that the Paleo is the language of heaven.
Yeah.
And so all these other languages came out of, and they borrowed from it heavily. And then, unfortunately, of course, during the time of the captivity, during Daniel's time, there was corruption. And then we get the modern that borrows from the Assyrian language. So, yeah, it's a Hebrew name, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And so I've quoted from this every so often in Jasher chapter 68 about Moses, because, a lot of times when we look at biblical people and we're like, okay, we see nobody in the annals of history with the same name. This person must be fiction. Now, one of my theories that I put forward is that I'm pretty convinced that Nimrod was never actually called Nimrod. Like I always envision that scene in Back to the Future 3 when Marty sees Mad Dog 10 and he's like, "You're Mad Dog," and he's like, "Mad Dog, nobody calls me that name." Then they string him up on a rope because of that. That Nimrod went by many different names, but not Nimrod. That is his exclusive biblical name. But look at all the different names that Moses had here. So, and at the end of 2 years, when the child grew up, she brought him to the daughter of Pharaoh, and he was unto her as a son. And she, her name was Bathia, called his name Moshe. It's interesting that her name is Bath. For she said, because I drew him out of the water. And Amram, his father, called his name Habar, for he said, so we got Moshe is the name that the woman who drew him out of the water, that's the name that she gave him. But then there's Habar for, his father, Amram, calls him Habar. So you would think that that's what we call him, right? That's what his actual Hebrew father named him. But he said it was for him that he associated with his woman whom he had turned away. And Yocheved, his mother, called his name Yukatiel, because she said, I have hoped to him to El Shaddai, and Elohim restored him unto me. And Miriam, his sister, called him Yered, for she descended after him to the river to know what his end would be. And Aaron, his brother, called his name Avi Zanuk. That yeah, I could see like they had some handshake, like little like fists. And he's like Avi Zanuk, whenever he sees him or something. He goes into the temple. He's like, hey, Avi Zanuk, saying, my father left my mother and returned to her on his account. And Kohath, the father of Amram, called his name Abigdor, because this is getting really confusing. Every single family member can't decide what to call him, because on his account did Elohim repair the breach on the house of Yaakov. And then their nurse called him Avi Soko, and then all of Yashville called his name Shema Yahu. So I don't know at what point in history they stopped calling him Shema Yahu and they started calling him Mashaha or Moshe.
Shemiyahu means the name of Yah, or named by Yah. So,
Okay.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, I don't know about, we have different names in our life. That's one of the things when, people get so very angry about the name of Yah, about the pronunciations or the name of Messiah, and they get so very angry, but they don't realize, just in our reading tonight, Joshua, he had two different names. He was Hosea and Joshua.
Yeah.
The English that we know of. So in this passage that we just read, he had two different names, and they're related names. They're basically just nuances. Does that make sense? Nuances of the same. And that's what it is with Messiah's name, whether it's Yeshua, Yeshau, Yeshayahu. All these are they're the same name. They're the same name.
So I've stated this many times. I don't consider myself a sacred namer. I don't know if his name is Yahusha, Yeshua, Yeshayahu. If I were in the first century, did they call him Jesus? Jesus Christos, in the first century. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm accused of being a sacred namer a lot. I think because, when you say Yeshua or Yahusha, that's the typical title sacred namer is attached to people who say that. Though I actually think there's way more sacred namers for Jesus Christ, way more, especially when you get to the KJV camp, and they will project onto me that I'm the sacred namer when in fact they are the sacred namer. And it's like, it's Jesus Christ and nothing else. And I've stated before, and this is one of the things that probably, there's a few things I've said along the way through the years that you never know what's going to get you in trouble. This is one of the things that has got me in hot water, is when I said publicly about 9 months ago, I was on another podcast, and I said that, saying Jesus Christ makes me uncomfortable. And I was given the reason being, but people just took that audio clip and they just ran with it, and the reason being, of course, they would say like, oh, that, he's demon possessed because, he can't take the name Jesus Christ. And it's like, actually, no, I can say that. It doesn't bother me. But I'm watching you guys you guys can't say Yeshua or whatever. You can't say that. Like, that is causing you guys to spin your heads. But the reason why is that Jesus Christ, of course, the name Jesus is only 500 years old. It's what I would call a little seasoned name. I don't have any problems with the name other than the fact that it's identified. There's a lot of baggage that's attached to different names, to different whatever. It could be a tie, like, I don't know, like something like Hebrew roots or whatever. And for me, he is the lawless, Torahless Greek God. And when you say Jesus, you are typically, people who say that are like, yeah, the Torah has been done away with. Jesus has freed me from that law. But when you say Yeshua or Yahusha or Yahushua or whatever, people know in their heads, they're like, oh, this is the Hebrew Messiah. This is the one who read Moses. This is the first century guy. And they know what you're talking about, and it makes them uncomfortable. All right. I was going to go through this thing here on so one thing you notice here in the names of Moses, it does not say what Pharaoh called him. It says what all the other people called him. And so the question is, what did Pharaoh call him? They purposely don't say. And I actually have theorized that he is actually his father, Pharaoh. His father would be Amenhotep. How do you pronounce this? Amenhotep III. And this is what he would look like. And these are different busts of him around the world, which would make him the fourth. And he was the fourth. So just give you guys really quickly why I suspect that he is a very good contender, that Moses was Amenhotep IV. And I can't outright prove this. This is from my the many lives of Nimrod paper. But he was so the third, this would be his father, his adoptive father, was the sixth pharaoh of the 12th dynasty. He had no son. And he did have a biological daughter, which is interesting because his daughter is actually the one that raised Moshe. Her name was Sobek Neferu. While Amenhotep III and the princess still lived, Amenhotep IV, which would be Moshe, was not only adopted but co-reigned with Pharaoh for 9 years over Upper and Lower Egypt. Did Sobek Neferu, the daughter, raise him? It seems plausible. For whatever reason, the fourth suddenly disappeared from history. No burial tomb to speak of. Not even his ancestry is recorded. And when the third died, his daughter filled in where the fourth was intended to rule. So that's interesting. He was raised to rule. He never ruled. The daughter took over. This would be Moshe's adopted mother. Her reign lasted only 44 to 8 years, and then she too died. And here's where it gets fascinating, because Egypt's wealth and power reached its peak in the 12th dynasty under Amenhotep III. Without an heir, his kingdom began to fall apart. And 40 years after the fourth's mysterious absence, Neferhotep suffered his kingdom to even greater losses. This is probably this would be the pharaoh in the Exodus story if this theory works out. His military was apparently decimated, and we'll just chalk that one up to the Red Sea crossing. We don't really know how his military was decimated. They just disappeared. The slave city of Kahun was abandoned. That's interesting. And I think we all know why. And once more, Neferhotep's body was never found. And shortly after his death, Egypt was destabilized and overrun by Hyksos. And the Hyksos appear to be the biblical Amalekites, and their genealogy can be traced to Edom. So that's really interesting. All right, going to skip this Job stuff. Oh, I did find this interesting that, oh no, I'll actually cover that later. Let's talk about the 70. And I think this is where we'll spend a lot of our time tonight. And so we see this famous passage right here, and they will declare unto you, Al Yon, and taking the nations as a possession, and his separating the sons of Adam. He set in place the boundaries of the people according to the tally of the sons of Yasharel. Feel free to comment anytime you want, Pamela. And I know that you wanted to, if you have Psalm 82 in front of you, if you want to read that one, I'll get there in a few minutes. Let's definitely read that. So let's look at a couple different translations here. Here's the LXX, Deuteronomy 32:8. When the Most High, or El Elyon in the Hebrew, divided the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the nations according to the number of the angels of Elohim. And his people, Yaakov, became the portion of YAH. Yasharel was the line of his inheritance. Now, in this here, there's a kind of a big debate on what angels mean. Are we talking about actual physical human kings, or are there Elohim that are placed over these kings? And of course, that's my theory on that right there. And then we read this in the Targum. It says, when the Most High made allotment of the world into the nations which proceeded from the sons of Noah, in the separation of the writings and languages of the children of men at the time of the division, he cast a lot among the 70 angels, the princes of the nations, with whom is the revelation to oversee the city. Now, in the Aramaic Targum, when they talk about angels, I mean, they're usually talking about spiritual entities here. I know that, again, I know that they could be people. Genesis 46:27 also talks about, what were these people it was divided up by? Well, we learn in Genesis chapter 46, and it says that when Yaakov and his family came into Egypt, that there were 70 in total. That comes from verse 27. But we know that the 70 existed before this. So even though that there is the number of Israel going to Egypt represents the number of these ruling angels, which is kind of interesting too, because, when Israel's in the wilderness, he's the promise to Abraham that they become like the stars. You see that there. So you see some connections between the ruling powers above with the 70, or whether it's the stars. Genesis 11:6-8 talks about the Tower of Babel, and Yahweh said to the 70 angels which stand before him. So clearly in this context, this is not kings of the earth going up to heaven. These are the literal Elohim spiritual entities that stand before him. He says, come, we will descend and will there commingle their language, that a man should not understand the speech of his neighbor. Who are these? I think these are the same as the Anunnaki. And the Sumerian texts talk about the same incident, that the Anunnaki actually got together to battle against Moloch, and they attacked them on all fronts. Eventually, though, Moloch actually overtakes the other Anunnaki, but that's a whole different story. And the word of Yahweh was revealed against the city, and with him 70 angels, having reference to 70 nations. So right there in the Targum, they're making that connection for you, that these 70 angels who stand in heaven are over 70 nations. And again, going back to Jasher, there's the 70 steps. And the context of this is Yosef, he's in prison. Pharaoh has the dreams. Yosef goes before him, and it says here, and the throne upon which the king sat was covered with gold and silver and with onyx stones, and it had 70 steps. The idea is that it says here in verse 47, and it was customary in those days in Egypt that no one should reign over them, but who understood to speak in these 70 languages. And this could be why, too, that Pharaoh was seen like as an avatar of the sun, that he would have been like a god on the earth, obviously, or an avatar for the gods. I mean, if he is capable of speaking the 70 languages, there's something divine going on there. Whether he did or didn't, I don't really know. But in this story, miraculously, Joseph is able to speak all 70 languages, and he's able to ascend all the way to the top, which just baffles everybody. Now, this is interesting in Enoch. Even though there's 200 watchers, and when you go into Sumerian literature, they will talk about the 200 watchers, but the Anunnaki, there were already like several hundred Anunnaki on the earth by this time, but there was the 200 that transgressed. But it is interesting that it says in chapter 10 that Yah, he gives the instructions to bind them for 70 generations. So there's a connection there between the 70, because we see judgment of the number 40, but it's interesting that there's 70 for the judgment of them. All right, for lack of time, I'm not going to read this whole thing. I've read to this to you guys before. This is in First Enoch, and this is when Yasharel is being divorced. They're being kicked out of the land, and Yahweh tells the 70 shepherds to take care of his sheep. He's removing the other flocks, and it says that right here in verse 65, and it says that the other shepherds after he's basically like, I am going to give you permission, to who you can kill and who you can't. But if you hurt one hair on their head above what you're able, if you start, mistreating them, I'm going to be taking down names, and you will be judged accordingly to how you treat the lost sheep of Israel. And it says that as soon as these sheep entered the pastures of these other shepherds, they began to slay and to destroy more than they were bidden, and they delivered those sheep into the hands of lions, and lions and tigers eat them. And this, of course, goes against the complete heart of Yah, right? What does he care about? The widows, the orphans. You take care of them, and if you don't have a heart for them, then you don't have a heart for the Yah. And clearly, these shepherds did not have that same heart. So, Psalm 82. Did you have this in front of you?
I
Pamela,
do.
And I have it right here, so I could follow along, and you could just read it.
All right. So Psalm 82, Mizamor of Asaph, Elohim, and I believe this is, of course, speaking of Elohim, the Son. Elohim has established himself in the gathered assembly of all mighty ones. In the midst of the Elohim, he will rule, judge, litigate. And to what time will you govern iniquity and face the guilty ones, the criminals who are liable for punishment? He has lifted himself up. Salah. Vindicate the weak, the feeble, the low, those hanging by a thread, and the bereaved of father, and render justice, that which is just and right, upright. Snatch from danger the feeble, the powerless, the one hanging by a thread, and the oppressed. Pluck him away from the hand of the wicked criminals, those liable to punishment. They have not acquired knowledge, neither do they understand it. They walk about in the place of darkness. He will cause to fall down all the foundations of Arats. And even I, have declared, you are Elohim, and the sons of Yaon, all of them. Surely, like Adam, you will be slain, and like the noble ones, he will fall down. Arise, Elohim, judge Arats, for you will acquire as an inheritance all the nations. And just as an aside, that word for he will fall down, it says it a couple of times. He will cause to fall down, and he will fall down. That is Nephal. That's where we get the word Nephilim. And so he will cause to fall down. So I can see it's giving us a little bit of a hint there. There's Nephilim, which are the ones who fell away from their first estate. So these who were on the council, and they betrayed him.
Pamela and I comment on this a lot, the word, the Nephilim word, because you guys will see it, like people come on, they leave comments on YouTube and they're like, speak English, this is, we live in America, you need to use English words, stop using these Hebrew words, and then like you follow their conversations and they start saying words like Satan and Nephilim, and you're like, I'm just like, you just used a Hebrew word, you just did it just now. Like you keep using these. Yeah, hallelujah. Yeah, there you go.
Say hallelujah just for whatever reason. They don't realize what they're actually saying. Praise Yah.
Yeah. So Psalm 82, that's is the famous passage where there's the divine council, the Elohim, the Elohim. They are brought before him. Of course, Yahushua HaMashiach, or YAH is one of them. And of course, Pamela and I are in agreement that YAH is the son of Elohim. And of course, he is also Elohim. And of course, he inherits the nations. He was the one that, followed the Torah, and he was very, very serious about it. He's the one that brought Moshe and the people into the land. And he's like, I'm going to live by this. And if you're coming to my land, you better too. And if you don't, you're going to be kicked out. It's the same thing with the divine council. If you do not lead the people as you ought, you will be removed. And so you've heard me say this many times before in the Gospel of Luke here, when the 70 apostles are sent out, the 70 emissaries, if that word apostle makes you uncomfortable, I'm of the opinion that the word apostle is not originated with the Bible. It is not a first century invention of Christianity. You can go back with the philosophers, the Greeks, whatever, the apostles is an emissary of a king. There are thousands upon thousands of apostles in Greek culture. That being said, Messiah sends out the 70, and it's 72 by some accounts, but the 70 obviously is a reference to the 70 Elohim or Elohim, the 70 Anunnaki over humanity, and it's a judgment, right? And I when he says here, straight out of the language of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, that it's going to be worse than Sodom and Gomorrah for you on that day. And so they're supposed to declare the kingdom, and if people reject them, you dust off you shake the dust and you move on. And of course, I believe this judgment event did happen with the institution of the millennial kingdom, the 1,000-year reign. And who knows, maybe some of these Elohim did repent. I don't know. I don't know if they did or didn't. That maybe we'll all find out someday. But I think that this was basically Yahusha or Yeshua. He's telling them, he's like, look, it's a message to these Anunnaki. He's like, look, I'm in charge now. I'm inheriting these nations. You messed up. You weren't interested. I'm taking over now. And you could still fall under this, covenant. You could still agree to these terms. It's up to you now. If the ball's in your court, as if the ball wasn't already in their court. This is interesting here that Job and the 70 number. Now, the LXX is an obvious one. You can see right there, LXX, it's 70. That number keeps popping up. But after his affliction, he lived 170 years. Now, it was 240 in total, but I find that really interesting. Why did they throw the 70 in there, according to this Septuagint? We see that the fates of the 70 happens in chapter 90 of Enoch. Actually, I guess I'm going to eat my own words here, because it says, and those 70 shepherds were judged and found guilty, and they were cast into the fiery abyss. So I guess, yeah, I shouldn't laugh. I mean, but yeah, I guess all 70 didn't end well for them. So wow, bummer. So just remember that next time you want to be in a position of authority and rule, that it's, I'm going to be doing a teaching here soon on the fiery abyss and who goes into it, what happens, and is annihilationism a thing, is eternal torment a thing. I will say this, that I'll give you guys a preview. I believe in annihilationism. I believe that there is a total death, a finality, that there is a death, that there's an extinguishing of the soul, done, you can never come back. I mean, that's a terrible thought. I mean, that's what death is, right? Like that gone forever. But there's something to be said, though, about, and I'll be talking about soul sleep this next week too. That the wicked go down to a type of kind of a condition of sleep as well, even though it's a kind of a nightmarish, troublesome, tormenting type of sleep. But these shepherds and the watchers and some of these top dog angelic creatures, there appears to be torment for them. I'm going to pull up passage after passage where it's like, they're rolling around in chains in fire, and because they have led so many people. And so I kind of am suspect that even though I believe that human souls will be mortal and extinguished, that Satan, it may be an eternal thing for him. I think there is a case to be made for that it's going to be ongoing. But we'll see. We'll see what the texts have to say. Okay, for lack of time, I'm going to skip some of this. Let's keep moving on. All right, this is good. You'll like this, Pamela. Yahweh hides himself, and it says right here in Devarim, and he declared, I will hide myself from them. I will observe what shall be their later end, for they are a perverse generation, children who have no faithfulness in them. This is cyclical. It happens every so many centuries, really, or I don't know, all the time, that he is. This is where I said that, pride is a terrible thing, and he could literally darken our visions and hide from us. And he's like, yeah, you're not going to see me anymore. I'm gone. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of your abominations. I'm tired of your hypocrisies. And this is one of the things that I see a lot of new people coming here, Tuck, more and more every month, every week. There's somebody like, I am brand new. I learned about the Torah 3 months ago. This is incredible. And I'm just a word of warning to everyone out there, because it is an incredible time. And YAH is merciful to us. and he will hold us up, but you have to guard the commands, because people who come closer to Yah and they're like, I want to live according to his instructions in righteous living. I want to live a holier life. I want to follow that calling. If you don't follow through with it, it may not end well. And it may be worse for you in the end. I'm not trying to put any fear porn out there, but you got to be, if you're going to go out to battle, you better be putting on your armor and guarding against arrows. That just is kind of common sense. So we read a few places where we read this. Isaiah 45, it says, truly you are an Elohim who hides himself. Elohim of Yasharel, Yeshua. That's really interesting there. It says salvation in, I put in that Yeshua, but I actually think it's actually saying the actual Elohim of Yasharel, Yahweh is Yeshua, right? And they will be put to shame and even humiliated, all of them. The manufacturers of idols will go away together in humiliation. And then here's one I quote from a lot. This is the Odes of Solomon, Odes 42. And I am of the opinion that this is referring to perhaps sometime in the millennial kingdom. And this is Yahushua HaMashiach speaking here. And he says, and I became useless to those who knew me not, because I shall hide myself from those who possess me not. And I will be with those who love me. And so he gets so tired of it all the time. I mean, Yahweh was tired of it all the time. He was tired of the whiny, bratty people who just, wanted to recoil at the thought of being obedient to him, and say, this is so burdensome. Why did you bring us out here? All this stuff. He's like, you know what? Whatever. Just you're not going to see me anymore. And I'm going to spend time with those I love. And I pointed this out that, it shifted. He went off somewhere else with the set apart. This is interesting. Lois Sheol. I actually got out my, it's not an arm's reach now. I actually got out Dante, Pamela, and I haven't read him since college, but I plan to read him again. Dante is really interesting because he is a late Middle Ages guy, and the whole theme, he gets heavily criticized by modern, Protestantism, probably modern Catholicism too. But the whole theme of his trilogy is pilgrimage, and I want to read him again with that in mind. And from what I've dug into him recently, like, there are some gems in there, some incredible stuff. So amongst all the criticism, I think I'm going to find some interesting stuff as well. But you put this in here: my fire is kindled in my anger, and you will be set on fire as far as the lowest Shaul. And of course, it's, Shaul, they're like, like the famous Paul, like a covenant with Shaul. Same word. And that's pretty intense. Like, he's like, I will send you to the lowest Shaul. So when I talk about when we dig into Genesis again, I'm going to be devoting 1 week to talking about fire. And I know there's not in the actual text in Genesis 1, it doesn't talk about this, but look what it says in Legends of the Jews, volume 1, right here. He said, in the beginning, 2,000 years before the heaven and the earth, 7 things were created: the Torah, written with black fire on white fire, and lying in the lap of God, the divine throne erected in heaven, which later was over the heads of the Hayat, paradise on the right side of God, hell on the left side. And there was a voice that cried out, return ye children of men. So the picture that's put up there is that, okay, there's the throne in heaven where Elohim sits. On one side is paradise. Actually on the right side. Over here, right side is paradise. Left side is hell. Or, you say Sheol or Gehenna. And people ask, well, why would you do that? Well, every king is, in my opinion, my response to this would be, every king is going to build a castle, and you're in the blueprint, you're going to put the jail, you're going to put the dungeon. You're knowing that people are going to transgress, and it's basically like choosing the sheep and the goat, the wheat and the tare, the left and the right. You can come over here to paradise, or you can choose this over here. So in the very beginning, according to Legends of the Jews, there was fire, and I believe that the fire itself is eternal, the lake of fire. Of course, we know that Sheol one day will be thrown into it, Leviathan thrown into it, but that doesn't mean that the fire itself is extinguished. Now, they also say this: hell has 7 divisions, one beneath the other. They are called Sheol, Abaddon, Bir, Shahat, Tit Ha Yawin, She'er, Mawit, Asher, Zalmawet, and Gehenna. Now, this I'm reading from Legends of the Jews. Everyone can take this with a grain of salt, but I know you guys enjoy this. The Legends of the Jews is like Reader's Digest, where they're basically taking all this different literature, extra biblical books, Jasher, Jubilees, everything, even Talmudic stuff, with rabbinical literature, and they're just putting it together. And it makes for great research to find where they're sourcing this from. Anyways, it requires 300 years to traverse the heights or the width or the depth of each division. And it would take 6,300 years to go over a tract of land equal in extent to the 7 divisions. So this is pretty intense. If Yahuwah has I will send you to the lowest Sheol. This is, 6,300 years to go over a tract of land equal in extent to the 7 divisions. So this is pretty far down there. Each of the 7 divisions in turn has 7 subdivisions. And people thought Dante was intense. Each of the 7 divisions in turn has 7 subdivisions, and in each compartment there are 7 rivers of fire and 7 of hail. Dante talks about this too. In fact, a lot of apocalyptic literature, they talk about how there's different, there is the hail side and the fire side. So again, take this, it is what it is, right? And I feel like I haven't dug into this enough just based on people's criticism of it, but there are so many texts out here that talk about this. I think it's worth investigating in the very least. The width of each 1,000 ells, its depth 1,000 and its length 300, and they flow one from the other and are supervised by 90,000 angels of destruction. There are besides in every compartment 7,000 caves. In every cave there are 7,000 crevices. And in every crevice, 7,000 scorpions. That sounds very pleasant. Every scorpion has 300 rings, and in every ring, 7,000 pouches of venom, from which flow 7 rivers of deadly poison. Now, again, all of this, everything they put in here, has very symbolic meaning of one thing or another. And I'm not, I didn't I wasn't I wonder what the 7,000 pouches of venom mean. But I'm sure there's meaning to it. If a man handles it, he immediately bursts. Every limb is torn from his body. Okay, that's getting okay. We don't need to go. We don't need to actually literally visit it to know that there's a deep hell. So corresponding to the 7 heavens, which I want to do probably in a few weeks when we talk about the firmament, I'll be talking about the 7 firmaments of heaven. God created 7 earths, each separated from the next by 5 layers. Over the lowest earth, so this is really interesting. So we're on the top layer. According to about Jewish tradition, there are 6 earths below us. And there is actually one right below us that actually has life in it. And this is total hollow earth theory. But below that, there are others. And going all the way down to the bottom, you finally get to, you get into Sheol and all that. So I'm just saving you guys time there for lack of time. Okay. With the remaining time, let's talk about this. And Pamela, you'll like this, I think. The Yahuwah, Yahusha, Yeshua connection. So once again, I will reiterate for anyone who's come in late into this game, for the newbies out there, that Pamela and I are in agreement. Pamela was the one that introduced me to this concept, really. That Yahweh, Yahuwah, right? Everyone pronounces him differently. That he is literally the Son of God. He is the Son of Elohim. And who is the Son of God but Jesus Christos, Yeshua, right? So when Yahusha is incarnate, he is literally the Lord. He is Yahuwah incarnate, all right? And I noticed this here. This really stuck out to me. So I want to show you as further evidence how it is interchangeable between Yahuwah in the Old Testament and messianic passages that say the same thing. So Yahuwah, the ever-living, he comes from Sinai or Sinaiah and has sprung forth from Shire unto them, shining forth from Mount Paran. And he arrived with a myriad of the set-apart ones in his right hand, a fiery commandment for them, wholly loving the people. All his set apart are in your hands. Now, this is talking about something that did happen, that Yahweh came with a myriad of his set apart ones, and of course in his right hand a fiery command. So this is reading from the NASB, so you can kind of see how this is going to match up with Enoch. So this is the same passage. This is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed the people of Israel before his death. And he said, Yahweh came from Sinai and dawned from Sierra upon us. He shone forth from Mount Paran. He came from the 10,000s of holy ones. So think about that line, the 10,000s of holy ones. With flaming fire at his right hand. Yes, he loves his people. All his holy ones were in his hand. So they followed in your steps, receiving direction from you when Moses commanded us a Torah as a possession for the assembly of Yaakov. Thus Yahweh became king in Jeshurun when the heads of the people were gathered, all the tribes of Israel together. All right, well, let's read Enoch, chapter 1. I'll read you the whole chapter here. Well, actually, let's just skip right to verse 3. Concerning the elect, I said and took up my parable concerning them. The Holy Great One will come forth from his dwelling, and the eternal Elohim will tread upon the earth, even on Mount Sinai. And wow, actually, I never caught that before. Mount Sinai, there is right there. And appear from his camp, and appear in the strength of his might from the heaven of heaven. So if I'm reading this right, this was fulfilled, the Holy One, the Great One, at Mount Sinai with Moses. And all shall be smitten with fear, and the watchers shall quake, and great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. And the high mountains shall be shaken, the high hills shall be made low, and shall melt like wax before the flame, and the earth shall be wholly rinsed in sunder, and all that is upon the earth shall perish, and there shall be judgment upon all men. But with the righteous he will make peace, or shalom. And this is, of course, the delivering of his Torah, and will protect the elect, and mercy shall be upon them, and they shall all belong to Elohim, and they shall be prospered, and they shall be blessed. And he will help them all, and light shall appear unto them, and he will make shalom with them. And behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the unrighteous, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their ungodliness, which they have unrighteously committed, and all the hard things which unrighteous sinners have spoken against him. Now, when I say it was fulfilled, this is partly fulfilled. Jude talks about the same passage as an event to come with Yahushua HaMashiach. It was also about these that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, behold, the Lord, or Yahweh, comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all, and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So right here, you're seeing Yahushua HaMashiach, Yeshua, interchangeable with Yahweh. An event that happened at Mount Sinai. He said he was going to land on Mount Sinai, but it was also an event that was going to happen when he was going to come again with all his holy ones to execute judgment. So boom, there it is. Why Yahushua HaMashiach and Yahweh are suspiciously never seen in the same room at the same time. Isn't that interesting? One leaves, the other comes in, he leaves, and the other comes in. It's kind of interesting how that works. And then, I want to show you this from the Aramaic Targum. And I'm just seeing this kind of in new light now. And when they're talking about the word of Elohim, I really think I think in Hebrew thinking, it's basically they're contrasting him from idols, because they're saying our God, our Elohim, our Elohim is a word. It's a voice, but we do not see his image, right? We're not putting his image on anything. So when the people of the house of Yasharel beheld the signs and manifestations, which the Holy One, whose name be praised, so we're going to find out what his name is here, had done at the Sea of Sup, or the Sea of Reeds, this is the crossing of the Red Sea, and the power of his hand, the children of the captives answering said to one to the other, come and let us set the crown of majesty on the head of our Redeemer. Their Redeemer, all right? They're Yeshua, their salvation. They recognize that Yahweh has brought them across the Red Sea, and they want to crown him king. But who maketh to pass over and passeth not? Who changeth and is not changed? Whose is the crown of the kingdom, the King of kings in this world? Who's King of kings, guys? Yeshua is, Yahushua HaMashiach, whose too is the kingdom in the world to come forever and ever. And whenever you see in Hebrew literature, whenever they talk about the world to come, it is always the millennial kingdom. I mean, it's kind of a little awkward to call it the world to come now if we believe that it has come. And if you call it the world that was, it's like, well, which world that was are you referring to, right? That's why the 1,000-year reign or millennial kingdom is a better term now. But the world to come was always in reference to the Messianic age. For Pharaoh's horses with his chariots and horsemen went into the sea, and YAH made the waters of the sea to return upon them. So they give his name there. YAH is going to be King of Kings in the world to come. There it is. Boom. Really interesting. And what else do we have here? Did you have anything you wanted to add? Oh, I cannot finish tonight without talking about this. This is so good. So you see two scenes here. This is Yosef meeting with his brothers. I'm guessing this would be Benjamin right here. I told you guys that I really, really, really like them. And here we see again Yahusha at the Last Supper, and of course the person here mysteriously looking a lot like a lady, but that's probably none of my business. So in Pamela's translation, she put this: upon the head of Yosef and upon the crown of the head of the Nazarite. Now this is Nazarite, Nazarene. Am I correct, Pamela? Close enough? Yes, no.
It can have multiple meanings. He can be considered the one who is separate, which that is what a Nazarite is. But he was separated from his brothers. He was set apart from his brothers, as in, Yah chose him from his brothers. And he's also, that word can also mean crown. So he was the crown of his brothers.
Well, now according to rabbinical tradition, Joseph actually did take a Nazarite vow, and he never drank wine until he was in the presence of his brothers. And this is what it says in Genesis 43:34. Then they served him by himself, and Joseph's brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves. So this is the scene. He's finally reunited with his brothers. But this is really interesting here because the Egyptians are not Hebrews. They're not Goyim. And if you can picture the scene, the reunion of all the brothers, and let's say this is a heavenly scene, and what do we see happening? The Egyptians could not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. So they did not take part in this, right? They are off doing their own thing. They could have come. It appears, according to this, the Egyptians could have come and sat with Joseph and his brothers, but they were like, no, that this is to be a Hebrew. That's an abomination. Now they were seated before him, from the firstborn according to the birthright to the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in astonishment. So they're still not clear who Joseph is. Then he took portions to them from his own table, and Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And he said, so they drank freely with him. Now, the KJV I put here, that says, and they drank and were merry with him. So this is basically giving this idea that they are, intoxicated. They're having a good time. They're drinking wine. They're merry and they're joyful. The idea that is put forward is that he ended his Nazarite vow at this point. And this is the first time he has had wine since he has been separated from his brothers. The reason I wanted to talk about this because look what happens in Mark 14. This is what we call the Last Supper, the famous meal. And as they were eating, he took bread, and after blessing it, broke it and gave it to them. He said, take this as my body. And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drink of it. And he said to them, this is my blood. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly I say to you, and here's what I want everyone to pay attention to. Truly I say to you, I will not drink again of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of Elohim. And so right there, it looks like Yahushua is taking the Nazarite vow. And the idea is he's not going to drink wine again until they're all brought into the kingdom together, which is a really exciting thought. Well, anything, I could read this to end tonight. Pamela, was there anything you wanted to? Oh yeah, I wanted to end on the prayer of Moses. Actually, this is what I definitely wanted to end on. Before I do, was there anything you wanted to add? Anything I missed out on a lot of stuff. I skipped a lot of stuff. Is there anything you want to
Well,
talk about?
it's impossible considering the amount of text that we had to work with tonight to touch upon everything, because there was some deep stuff. Some of the stuff he says, that's it's hard for people like that. I create, but I slay, but I make alive. I I I smite, that is, I wound someone, but then I heal them. And so it's hard for people to rectify their idea, the God they've created in their brain, to what Elohim really is, beyond our understanding, because we can't see all the possibilities. That was one of the things I've been meditating on, the book of Matthew, because I've done some of the translation of it, and I've been studying the manuscript and looking at some of the things, and one verse, I think I've mentioned this to you, was he said, all power, but it's actually all powers is given me in Shemayim and in Aratz. And that word for powers is all the possibilities, all the overcomings. And so all these powers, all these abilities, that was another possibility. So all the abilities, all the possibilities, all the overcomings are given to Messiah, so he can see all outcomes. And so we might not understand, why did he allow this? Why did this happen? Why did he allow this? We can't see the possibilities. So I guess that's one thing I want to bring out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, here's what I was going to do. I was going to just conclude our year's Torah portions. Moshe is now dead, and wanted to conclude with Psalm 90, which is attributed to Moshe. And I think that, I mean, for those of you who've gone through Deuteronomy, you read this and you're like, wow, this is clearly from the pen of Moses. And I forgot to ask you earlier, because you've published Psalms volume 1, 2, and 3 from the Paleo Hebrew. I think you're done with 4, correct?
I finished translating number 4.
Yeah. You still have some work to do on it.
I have to type it up. And basically,
okay.
Edit,
so,
just to fine tune some of the stuff.
Yeah. But I don't think you've published Psalm 90 yet, right? Because I know that volume 3 goes.
Psalm 90. I translated it, but it's in the next group.
Okay, all right.
If I have, it's in one of my. I've not even finished unpacking my stuff, so where could it be? But it's somewhere here in the apartment. But
that's okay. That's all right. So we can't end this on Pamela's paleo translation of 90. So, but I'll read from here, and this is how it ended tonight's a prayer of Moses, the man of Elohim. This is what it says: YAH, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you gave birth to the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are Elohim. You turn mortals back into dust and say, return, you sons of mankind. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it passes by, or like a watch in the night. You have swept them away like a flood. They fall asleep. In the morning, they are like grass that sprouts anew. In the morning, it flourishes and sprouts anew. Toward evening, it wilts and withers away. For we have been consumed by your anger, and we have been terrified by your wrath. You have placed our guilty deeds before you, our hidden sins in the light of your presence. For all our days have dwindled away in your fury. We have finished our years like a sigh. As for the days of our life, they contain 70 years. or if due to strength 80 years. Of course, he lived to be 120 years, but yet their pride is only trouble and tragedy, for it quickly passes and we disappear. Who understands the power of your anger and your fury according to the fear that is due you? So teach us to number our days, that we may present to you a heart of wisdom. Do return, YAH. How long will it be? And be sorry for your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your graciousness, that we may sing for joy and rejoice all our days. Make us glad according to the days you have afflicted us, and the years we have seen evil. Let your work appear to your servants, and your majesty to their children. May the kindness of Yahweh our Elohim be upon us, and confirm for us the work of our hands. Yes, confirm the work of our hands. Psalm 90. That concludes it, guys. Rolling back the scroll. I feel great. I feel accomplished for both of us. Pamela, thank you for being so on top of it and being
it's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey. There were times where I'm just like, you talk about you feel very inadequate. I certainly have. I have felt inadequate, and of course the enemy is attack me, give up, quit. Who do you think you are? But by the strength of the Ruach, I made it through, and by wisdom, it's the work of it's the work of wisdom. It's the work of understanding. It was her work, and so I praise him for, and I thank you too, Noel. You really took a chance. You really took a chance. Because a lot of people have attacked you with this over this time, for using not just that you're using the Hebrew, but they're like, what does this even mean? I've never heard this pronunciation before. What is this? And so, they've really attacked you. And I thank you. I thank you for believing in this, for believing in me. And I thank the tech community that they have been so receptive, that there's so far no pitchforks and torches. And so I praise y'all. It's been quite a journey.
All right. Well, with that, I bid adieu. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Have a great rest. And for those of you who are either beginning the fall feast, of course, Pamela and I are smack dab in the middle of Sukkot right now. And so just enjoy your time, everybody. Love you guys. We'll do this again next week. See you then. See you next week in Genesis.